A student has sent an email asking for help with a multiple choice question, which is about how to calculate producer surplus. So let's look at that question. This is a question here. The question's basically saying that we've got an equation representing demand for product, and we've got an equation representing supply of a product, and we're being asked to find the producer surplus in equilibrium. Okay? So we shouldn't be afraid of these little equations. They're nice and simple. All they're saying is this is a demand equation. All it's saying is that various prices, there will be various quantities that will be demanded. And the supply equation is also similarly saying at various prices, there will be various quantities supplied. All the equations are doing is specifying the particular relationship between the price and quantity demanded and the price and quantity supplied. They're not doing anything more complicated than that. Now, if you remember the discussion that we had in the workshop, the concept of the producer surplus is pretty straightforward. Saying once we've got put price on the vertical axis and quantity supplied on the horizontal axis. Once we've been given a supply curve, say for example it might look like this, at whatever the price happens to be, say P1, it tells us the quantity that the sellers are willing to make available in the marketplace. We know that there's a difference between the price that the sellers receive and the minimum price they would have been willing to accept, which was equal to their marginal cost as given by the supply curve. So the difference between those two, the price they get and the price they would have been willing to accept, the minimum price they would have been, is the producer surplus. So we're interested in this area here. We need to know what is this area. Now that's going to be pretty straightforward. Once we know the price and therefore know the quantity, we can calculate this area and then halve it, assuming our supply curve is a straight line. That will give us our producer surplus area. So we need to try and do that. We need this information here to do that. Now fortunately the question tells us that we want to find the producer surplus in equilibrium. So that is when the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. So there needs to be a demand curve as well. Right? But fortunately we've been given that information. We've been given an equation to represent this supply curve, and that equation was the quantity supplied equals the price. That simple equation there. And we were given an equation for the demand curve as well. So the quantity demanded will equal 20 minus the price. So what we need to find is this point where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. That will reveal to us what's the equilibrium price. So let's do that now. So we've got our demand equation. It says the quantity demanded equals 20 minus the price. We've got a supply equation, which is even simpler. The quantity supplied equals the price. And we know that in equilibrium, that the quantity supplied will equal the quantity demanded. Okay? So, or in other words, in equilibrium, this will equal this. So let's write that out. The quantity supplied, this, equals price. In equilibrium will be equal to this. Now all we need to do is put all the p's on one side. So we can add P here, add P here. This cancels out. We've got 2P equals 20. And we can divide by 2, divide by 2. This cancels. Price equals 10. Voila! There's our price in equilibrium. Got our equilibrium price. But what about the equilibrium quantity? We also need that. Alright. Well, what we can do is we can take this equilibrium price and plug it back into either one of these equations to tell us what the equilibrium quantity would be. So for example, let's take the supply equation. Quantity supplied in equilibrium equal to the equilibrium price, 10. Simple. So we know the equilibrium quantity supplied is 10. And since we know equilibrium means quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, the equilibrium quantity demanded must also be 10. But let's just double check it for fun. So quantity demanded equals 20 minus equilibrium price Of course it's going to be the same. If we go back to, remember what our concept was of producer surplus, we've got 10, there's our equilibrium. Alright, but we haven't quite finished yet, because what does this curve, this supply curve look like? Does it start up here, this, or what? Well, we can easily figure that out. It's very, very simple. Because we know that the quantity supplied equals the price. That's the equation for the supply curve. So we can ask this question. If the price was 0, what would the quantity supplied be? Well, price equals quantity supplied, so we know that the quantity supplied would be 0. We've got a linear supply curve, a straight line supply curve. Right? In fact, we knew it was a straight line supply curve as soon as we saw it. We didn't really need to do this. We've got our vertical and horizontal intercept. The supply curve starts at the origin point and goes, it's a straight line through the equilibrium. So we've got all the information we need, don't we? 10 times 10. 10 times 10 is 100, divided by 2, bisected, gives us 50. The answer to this question is that the producer surplus equals 50.